Hello, folks, and welcome to Connecting with Clients. I'm your host for today, Eric Mittelstadt, and we're going to look at 3 tools for improved communication with your clients and for data collection that exist in LegalServer. So from today's session, you're going to understand how online intake functions, what online intake is. You're going to hear about benefits of text messaging with your clients. You're going to see how external forms can be used to streamline your data gathering. And you're going to feel comfortable creating some better connections, systems with your clients. So again, the 3 things we're going to talk about today: online intakes. This is basically a link that you can put on your website, or you can provide to people through email or any other way where they can enter data. It's a secure connection into LegalServer. They can enter data there and it will populate right into your instance of LegalServer when you're ready for it to do that. And I'll talk more about that. We're going to talk about text messaging and how you can text out of LegalServer. Importantly, also how you can send reminders to your clients using text messaging. And it really is the way so many people are communicating nowadays. It really is a way that you can stay connected, hopefully lose contact with fewer clients. Stay connected, not lose your clients. And then external forms. Your clients do the data entry for you. It's a way that you can gather documents. You can get signatures. You can get forms filled out, you can get information, and again, it all populates directly back into LegalServer securely, so saving you time and saving your staff effort. Let's start by talking about online intake. So online intake is a way for you to be more accessible to the public, accessible 24/7, a link that they can access anytime from your website and fill in information and apply for services. It is also a way you can have a different link and a different setup to get a warm handoff from your community partners, an easy way for them to provide information to you. And again, they're typing in the information and then it's populating directly into your instance of LegalServer when you're ready for it to do that. And in that way, you can save your staff time and get all this information from community partners or from clients directly. So it is hosted as a separate site, and there's a reason for that I'll explain. And it's built with standard LegalServer tools, so nothing too exotic. But there's a reason why we keep it as a separate site, separate from your own site, and I'll talk about that in just a second. Some other aspects of online intake that you should know about: you can transfer intakes to multiple destinations. So if you have partnerships, if you have other folks that you work with and you want to do a triage system and have the case data sent to different places, you can do that. There's multiple language support, so you can have folks see questions in their own native language, the language they're most comfortable with. We'll take a look at a little bit at that. And you also, folks don't have to complete your full intake and then find out later that maybe they don't qualify for your services. You can set up the system so that it can tell folks, hey, if you have this type of problem, we don't handle that, but here are some referrals, and it will exit clients out of the system at the appropriate points so that they don't have to spend their time filling out forms unnecessarily if it's a situation that you can't help with. So let's take a look at what an online intake site looks like. So here we are on a standard online intake site. We use this site for demos. You can see that it looks much like a standard LegalServer site. Your site might look a little bit different, of course. You've got it configured to your needs, but it is a standard online LegalServer site. You really only want to have a couple of people with access to this site, your administrators who will configure the system, set up the questions that you want to ask. And the reason for that is the same reason why we keep this as a separate site. So this site, information is going to come into this site, be filled out by clients. But what if you have a conflict of interest with one of those clients? What if that's information that you don't want to bring into your system? That's why it's a separate site, and you choose the point in time where you want to bring that information in. So what will happen is the client will fill out an online application. It comes into a holding area. You get just a little bit of basic information about it. You get names, you get some conflict checking information, so you can check the conflict. You can make sure that it's information you want to bring into your system. And then when you press the button, all that information comes into your instance of LegalServer. But you have control over that. And so you can avoid conflicts of interest. And that is the reason why it's a separate site. It doesn't mix with your data until you tell it to come in and to mix with your data. That's the way the system is designed to work, to prevent conflicts of interest and make sure that you've got some separation between all of this information and the information in your regular LegalServer database. All right, so let's take a look here. I'm just going to click. You can see we just have a couple of controls here on the home screen that are handy for your administrators. We can edit the online application process right from here. We've got a link to go into the back of the process and to look at the forms that we're using. So very easy to come in. You can see this will look familiar. It's a regular process in LegalServer. I've got 5 different forms here that are part of the online intake process. Often there's a landing page, typically having some instructions here, some welcome language. We'll take a look at that and we start gathering information, but you may have a welcome page that warns people that they're not guaranteed a lawyer just because they're filling this form out. Makes it clear that you don't have an attorney-client relationship yet. You may have instructional language that just says, this is our service area. You could have that as a specific question. Are you within our service area? If the answer is no, then that person could be directed, again, to exit the system and be given some referrals to other places. So you can see that the setup here is much like any other process and form in LegalServer. There are some specific blocks that work better in online intake than elsewhere. So for example, right here, we've got the online intake no adverse party family block. There are some instances where there are some blocks that are specially designed for online intake. And if you need configuration assistance, we also can help you with that. As you can see, it's the standard setup, but easy to create questions. You create fields and questions in the very same way you do on your regular site. One important thing to note is that when you create questions here and you want the information to transfer to your site, you're going to do what's called a field transfer, just by going to the big admin button here and typing in field transfers. You'll go to a place here where you can transfer the fields between your online intake site and your regular site. That's necessary so that the 2 sites can pass the information right into the fields where you want it to be. So that's a process that you'll go through as you're setting this up. So it's all pretty straightforward. We'll take a look now at what it looks like for the client. I can start an online application here. So you've got a link that is the same sort of link your client will click on to come into online intake. And again, just to give you some idea what it looks like for them, again, once they come in here, they're in a secure instance inside LegalServer, so it's more secure than sending information by email or some other means. And you can see that you can have warnings here, information for your client. When they click yes, they get a continue button and can move on. And they get fields here, just like in LegalServer, and fill these things out. And again, this information is going to populate directly into your instance of LegalServer when you're ready for it to come in. So that is what it looks like for the client. And I wanted to show you one other thing. Just going to come back then to the home page. You can see that you can run reports. There's some reports that are right here on the home page about activity on the online intake site. So you can always come in here and get reports of how many people came in, at what point they exited the system, what sort of referrals they got. So in terms of your client counts and keeping track of who's trying to access your services this way, you can come in here and do regular reports and get all of that information. Just a little bit more about online intake. I'm going to jump here to our help pages. I hope that you all are using and are familiar with help.legalserver.org. So much helpful information here. And you see I've searched for the multiple language support page. Again, this is what allows you to set up the ability for folks to answer questions in their own language. You do supply the translation, but we can set up many languages that work. You can see there's a cost to this, but there's a long list of languages that can be included depending on what's most prevalent in your service area. And then that's the multiple language support. And then of course, just going to online intake here in the help pages, you can see that there's a cost to purchasing this module, a one-time setup fee plus $50 a month ongoing for maintenance, but really a valuable module, very popular, and again, makes you more accessible to clients and also has them entering a lot of information for you that saves your staff time as you bring that directly into LegalServer. The key takeaway for online intake, again, it makes you accessible to clients 24/7. There's a link on your website. Apply here. They get that link. They can come in anytime, night or day, and apply for their services, and often find out while they're answering the questions, find out if in fact it appears they qualify for your services, although there's no relationship established until you decide to bring that information in and accept the case. And again, it also can make you more accessible to client partners. They don't have to try to track you down. They can make a referral to you just by coming in a different link, a sort of streamlined referral process, and give you the information about a client who has given them permission to do so, and provide you the information for that client. And again, it populates directly into LegalServer, saving you time and making that warm handoff from a community partner possible. Let's turn now to SMS text messaging. You can send text messages out of LegalServer to your clients. Your staff don't have to use their personal cell phones, or if you have company cell phones, you don't have to use those either. You're just using your instance of LegalServer to send text messages back and forth. It really is the way people are communicating nowadays, and is a much better way to stay in contact with your clients. I'm also going to show you how you can set up appointment reminders, which is a great way. Again, probably you're getting those from your doctor's office. I get them from my dentist, but you can do that now with your own clients and help them remember when you have appointments, when you have hearings. It's a much better way to stay in contact with your clients. What's necessary for text messaging in LegalServer is a Twilio account. Twilio is a piece of software, a provider that does text messaging. That's who we have the integration with right now. They just happen to be the ones that were the first in line to get integrated, and it seems to be working with people. So it's a Twilio account. You are responsible for the cost of that Twilio account, but there's nonprofit pricing, and it usually does not amount to us. It's sort of fractions of a penny per text that you send. So even if you're sending a lot of text messages, it doesn't add up to be a huge expense. And you're seeing here on the screen the way it looks in LegalServer. You enter the phone number, you can enter a message. There's some different ways you can choose to have the information come back into your system in terms of finding the right case that sent the text message out. There's an alert on the case when a text message arrives so that you know there's a text there that you need to go in and take a look at. So it's a great way to communicate with your clients. You get a record within LegalServer of all the text messages that you send and receive. So a list view, just like this, like you're familiar with, that tracks all of the text messages coming in and out of your system. And you also get case notes. So within the case notes of each case where there's text messaging, you'll see the text messages and the numbers that went out to, so you've got a good record of all of your client communications. A very cool thing, a very cool feature in LegalServer is being able to send reminders of events or deadlines to yourselves or your clients. Let's take a quick look at that. I'm going to jump now to a demonstration just of that one feature of text messaging. We can set up an event or a deadline from within a case, or we can come to my calendar tab here, and the actions menu will just come into the add new event form. And I'm just going to come down to the bottom of this form and show you the add reminder feature here. If I open that up, you can see here that I can send out reminders relative to events. So I can send out something, let's say I want to send out something one day before my hearing. I can do that one day ahead of this event that I'm establishing here. And then maybe I also want to do another reminder. I can add an additional reminder here at the same time and say I also want to send out something 2 hours before that event. Another reminder to my client that we have a meeting or we have a hearing to attend or whatever it is. I can set up different reminders here and send them out. They can arrive by email, but they can also be sent by text messaging. So a really handy feature for text messaging in LegalServer that helps your clients stay on track, helps you stay better connected. Hopefully you lose fewer clients. We all know that in LegalServer, legal aid community, it's difficult to stay in contact with clients. We often lose contact with them, but text messaging now is a way much more reliable than email that folks will stay in contact with you. It's the way folks are used to communicating now. So the key takeaway for text messaging is that you can solve that problem of losing contact with your clients. Text messaging will really help you stay in better contact. They know how to find you within their cell phone. You know how to get in touch with them. And it really helps in a lot of ways for you to stay better connected with your clients. All right. The third thing we're going to talk about today is external forms. External forms are forms you send out from a case and have clients enter information. And again, just similar to online intake, with an external form, the information that a client sends back to you will populate directly into their case. So no need for dual entry. It's a secure system, more secure than email, easy way to gather information from your clients. Some of the common uses of external forms, as I mentioned, just getting your client to fill out a form and provide you with more information. You can send them a survey at the close of a case and have them fill out information in a sort of client satisfaction survey of some sort. You can use this system to send forms to a pro bono volunteer and get an update on the case they have taken. Easy way for them to just click on a link in their email and answer a few questions. You don't have to try to track them down with a phone call or whatever. You can use an external form to do that. You can use an external form to gather documents. So even just having a simple form that you send out that a client can attach documents to. When those documents come back into LegalServer, they're automatically uploaded as documents to the client's case. And you can also have signatures in the system. You can get a signature. It's not a signature that you're going to use for court pleadings or for official documents, but for a client retainer agreement, other basic forms. There's a signature process that you can use, and so they can fill out this form and do a citizenship attestation, for example, or something like that. And when they submit the form back to you, you get a record of what they signed and an actual copy of the signature that they put on the page when they completed your external form. So there are 3 steps to creating an external form. It's slightly different than a regular form in LegalServer. You're going to create an external profile. That's what the client sees after the form is submitted. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. You're going to create the actual external form. That's what the client fills out. And then you're going to create the process, and the process just has one special step to it. So you're going to make sure you have a specific type of external process. And I'm going to show you that because we're going to walk through the process of actually creating an external form and process right now. Okay, so here we are at our demo site again, using my demo site for this, but we're going to set up an external form. We're going to go through those steps, 1, 2, 3, to set up an external forms process. Full disclosure, there is one additional step you have to take to make the form available to your staff to actually send it out. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then a little bit more work. But you'll see that we're going to do it quite quickly. Not a big deal to create external forms, and they come very handy. So let's do that now. I'm going to come to our big admin button here and go to forms. This is how I get to processes, forms, and profiles. I type forms in here. You could type processes or anything else to make that come up. You also could use this on the left-hand side here, this menu. We're going to process management right there, so you can just use that link if you like. I always just type in forms, and then we click here to go to processes, forms, and profiles, which as a LegalServer site admin, you're probably familiar with this. But again, a little bit different build to do an external form. So the first thing we're going to do is build our external profile. That's step 1. We need an external profile. You can see I have one in here before I created a retainer agreement previously. We're going to just use the plus here. I can also go to the actions menu to create a new form, but we're just going to go to the plus here and create our new external profile. So let's just build something today to ask some landlord-tenant questions. So I'll do landlord-tenant external profile, we'll call this. And so again, this is just all this external profile is, and we'll make it active, is the landing page that the client is going to see when they've completed the process. The system has to have a place for them to land, and it lets them know that they were successful in completing the form. So we're going to make it active. And all we really need on this form is some language for the client to tell them that they have successfully submitted their form. So I'm going to add a couple of headers here. You could use an instruction box. They show up much the same. Whatever you want to do. You can put additional information on this form. If there's something after the client fills out a form that you want them to know, you could put that here. But I'm just going to open up this header, and in the text here, we'll just say, thank you for submitting your form. And maybe in a separate line, we can say, we'll be back in touch shortly. You'll do something much better than that, of course, but you get the idea here. This is just what the client is going to read and see after they have submitted their form. So that's it. It's an external form. We'll make sure we're doing the right kind of form, and we'll just hit continue to save that. Then we're going to come in and create our actual form. So I'm going to come to primary forms here. And again, I need to be careful that I'm creating the right kind of form. I can go to the actions menu and do that, but we also still have one of these pluses down here too. And if I keep going across, auxiliary form you might be used to using. If I go one more button over here, I've got the new external auxiliary form. So we're going to do that. So this is going to be the form that our client actually fills out. We'll just call this landlord-tenant questions. I'm not going to create a process yet because there's a special step in the process we have to follow. So don't create a process yet. We'll do that manually, but we'll make this active, and we do need a continue button so that our client can submit the form, can save the form and submit it. And from here, I'm just building a form like I would any other form in LegalServer. So maybe we added a header and we label it. This is what our client is going to be reading. So maybe I don't shorthand landlord-tenant, but I spell it out. Again, just keeping in mind as we do this, that this is what our client will actually see. And then we've got some fields here. Whoops, some fields. And I think I've got some different landlord-tenant questions in here. Let's see, there's one, describe your apartment's condition. We can ask that. Do you have a landlord-tenant issue? We probably already know that they do, but you get the idea. I can add whatever fields I want here to my form. This is what the client will actually see and fill out. So presumably I've got my fields all ready to go, and I build my form with the information I need from my client. If you are starting this build from scratch, then I'm telling you this a little bit late maybe, but the good idea to create all your fields first, have them ready to go, and then you're going to come in and put them on your form, and then you're going to put your form on your process. So it's just like every other build you do in LegalServer. Fields go on forms, forms go on processes. We don't need to add more here. You get the idea. We can add whatever questions we need for our client to fill out here. There are some special things we can do. So we can use blocks here. And so we can use a branch logic block if we need to. This, do you have a landlord-tenant issue, could have been in branch logic maybe, and the rest of our questions part of that branch logic. We can do that just the same. As I mentioned, we can do the signature attestation and get a signature from our client. That works really well. We can do a send email. So if I do the send email block here, at the bottom of my form, when the client submits the form, it can send an email notice to me or to someone in my office that the form has been submitted. And we can also do a PDF. We can email a PDF or generate a PDF of the profile. So that's something else we can set up. We won't go into that all today, but that's something else we can set up so that the client gets a copy of their own form that they signed. It can be automatically sent to their email. And that might be part of the message you give them. An email, a PDF of this form will be sent to your email in the next few minutes, and that'll just show up in their email. It can also be sent to the case email or to your email. So you've got a PDF copy of the form that was signed as well, in addition to the electronic copy that you're going to have within LegalServer. So some things you can do and blocks you can add to your forms for some additional functionality here. But basically you see that you're building the form in the same way you build any other form in LegalServer. We'll hit continue and save our form now. So we've got our external profile. That was one. External form, that's two. Now we're going to come and create our external process. Again, I can go to the actions menu, or I can just come over here to my pluses and find new external auxiliary process. So I'm going to hit that one and create that. And here we'll call this again landlord-tenant questions. This is the process that's going to run that form. It's okay if the names are quite similar. That usually makes some kind of sense. We'll make this active. The rest of these can be no for our process. The important thing is that it's active. And then, of course, we're going to find our form right here at the top of the list because we just created it. We're going to move that up into enabled, and we've got our landlord-tenant questions now running on our landlord-tenant questions process. And then the reason I came in here to do this manually is that I've got to set this follow-up profile on our external form. And of course, that's going to be the landlord-tenant external profile that we established in step one. We've come full circle there. And this is what makes it that once the client has completed this process, that profile is going to come up for them to see with our thank you message. So that's the reason to create this manually, and make sure you don't forget that or you'll get an error at the end of the process. We've got our landlord-tenant questions on a form, running on a field, running on a process, and we've got our profile set up. So what do we need to do now? Well, there is one more step. So let's hit continue here to save this work, of course. Now we have to make this available to our staff so that they have a place to send it out, right? So we are going to take this process and put it on a form, on a regular auxiliary process, and make it available in our cases. We could do that from here, of course. We can edit our main profile from here, but I, of course, like when I'm just working on something on a specific case, we'll just come into a case here. When I'm looking at a case and I know I need to make a change that affects my case profile and what I'm seeing from here, then I like to be looking at the form so I know I'm in the right place, and using the little admin button and the edit profile function from here to make the change I'm going to make to this menu. So before I can do that, I've got to create that auxiliary process. So from here, I'm going to come back into Forms, Processes, and Profiles. And now from here, I'm just creating a regular auxiliary form. So this is the key. This is how you're going to make the magic happen. I'm going to come in and just make a regular auxiliary form, not an external one now, just a regular auxiliary form. I just want this to live on the Actions menu. And I'm going to say that we're going to call this Send Landlord-Tenant Questions. This is what's going to actually send the questions to our client. And from here, I do want to just create a new process for this. It's just a regular menu item on my Actions menu. We're going to make it active. And I also do want a continue button so that when I hit continue, it actually sends the form. So we're going to have all yeses there. And again, there's nothing special about this process, so it's just okay to have the system created automatically for me. Now here's the key to making this work. I'm going to come to blocks here. And the funny name of this block is the Client Survey Send Request. I'm not sure who named it. But that is what you're looking for. Client Survey Send Request is the block that will send your external form. So let's add that to our form here, to our auxiliary form. You can see that block comes in. A couple of things you can do behind the block here. Of course, we've got to first select our external form, our external process. We've got our landlord-tenant questions right there. Right here, we've got a couple of choices. What we're looking for is we're going to send this to a client. It's a matter related to a case. We can, as we mentioned, maybe get an update from a pro bono attorney that's related to this particular case, but we want the client related to a case. That's who we're sending it to. We've got the default method of email here. We've got our external process selected. And then here, this is the actual language that's going to be included in our email. So we can set this up as a template here. If we want to include some additional information or language in our email, we can do that here. The only key thing is, you see where it says external link there in between the parens. You need the parens and you need external link to be in your language here. That's what actually sends the link out. That's the magic that sends the link out. So if you make edits to these fields, just don't remove or change that external link in between the parens there. All right, so once you have that on your form, that's actually all you need. That's what's going to send this form to the client. So we'll save this work. And while we're doing it, of course, it's creating a process for us as well. And then we come back to that case that we opened up, and we are going to go in and add that to our Actions menu. So I'm going to come to the little admin here and edit profile. Like I said before, that's what I like to do to make a change here to the case that I'm looking at. We'll come down here to Side Action Elements and open that up. And we're going to edit our Side Action menu there. So this is just the process that if you're an experienced site admin, you're likely familiar with, to come in and make an addition to your Actions menu. We'll come in here under Civil Actions and just add now Send Landlord-Tenant Questions. So we'll add that. Just find that on our list there and add that to our Actions menu. So we'll save that. We'll hit a continue here and we'll come back around. Great. So now we've added that to our Actions menu. Let's demonstrate it for you. We'll come back into that case. And so we come to the Actions menu now, and your staff will be able to come to Civil Actions and Send Landlord-Tenant Questions. And that's going to pull up this form that tells me I can send this. It's by default sending by email. I can see that it's my Landlord-Tenant Questions. If I had an email entered, you can see here I don't have an email entered on this case. It's a fake client, of course, so there's no email. But the email would come up here if your client had one. I'm going to enter my email so I can just show you a demonstration of this. And again, we have the ability to make changes from here. So if our template isn't quite right for this particular client, we can still edit it from here. So this is going to be our test external form. And I can make changes here. This, again, is the stock language that was set up behind the block. But if I need to change it for this particular client, I have the ability to do that here. Again, making sure I don't delete that external link between the parens there. So we get that set up and hit continue. And that's it. We've sent our external form now to our client. We can come in here to my email box, and we see that email arrives there, right there, the test external form that I sent from my case, and I get this link. And I simply click on the link. Now there's a step here for the client that I haven't mentioned until now, and that is that they have to verify their identity. We want some sort of verification. It's a very simple one, but some sort of verification here that the client is actually the one that's filling out our form. So in this instance, we're asking for date of birth. I just checked before I started to make sure I had a date of birth for that particular test client, and enter that and hit continue, and that'll take us into our form. Now, if you're sending this to pro bono attorney to get an update, you can make it their bar number. As long as that's in the system in LegalServer, if you've got their bar number recorded, they can enter their bar number, and that gets them into the system. So there's a couple of different choices of things you can do in terms of verification. And so you can see now that I've got the form we set up. I can say, do I have a landlord-tenant issue? I can describe my apartment's condition here. And I can fill this in based on the process that we just created. And once the client is done, I can hit continue, and I get this profile that we set up telling them they submitted their form successfully, and that we'll be back in touch with them shortly. Again, that's how external forms work. It's secure. You get the information that you need. Again, we can upload documents here. We can have a signature attestation. We can have a system that'll send us an email with the send email block. We can download a PDF automatically in the background. All those things can be set up on your external form. And when the client clicks continue, it'll run all those things and get things where you want them to be. So that's the external forms process. And it's just a way for you to gather information easily and efficiently, gather documents easily and efficiently, get signatures from your clients in a really easy manner. A great tool in LegalServer that, along with text messaging and online intake, can really help you stay better connected with your clients.